Hi everyone, my name is Jenny and welcome back to my channel. So transparently, I filmed like 2 different videos and I kind of hated both of them. So I'm going to scrap them and I'm going to start a completely new reading vlog instead. I think for me, sit-down videos feel a little bit stilted and unnatural, and I kind of am someone who likes to yap. If you didn't know, if you're new to the channel, I like to just talk and talk and talk very casually. It just feels more comfortable and more conversational this way. So I am going to start a weekly reading vlog and kind of see where the wind takes me. There is one book that I do have to start because I am buddy reading it with my friend Michelle. I feel like 2026 is the year of buddy reads with her because I have read, I think, like 3 books with her so far this year, maybe more than that. And then we're going on to our 4th. She's already started it, but I have some errands to run today, so I have yet to pick it up. But I wanted to film this intro to the vlog. And that book is The Poet Empress by Xin Tao. My friend Ellie read it, gave it a 5-star. I think my friend Angela also read it and gave it a 5-star. And on Goodreads, Robin Hobb gave it a 5-star. And if, again, you're new to the channel, Robin Hobb is one of my favorite authors of all time. And anything that Robin Hobb leaves like a review for, I tend to pick it up and just see if it's something that I jive with. And I've just been hearing so many good things about this fantasy, and it's a standalone, which I think is hard to come by for fantasy genre in general. It's usually duologies or very long series, so a standalone is something I'm really excited for. And I know this has to do with a sort of literary poet type magic system, so very excited to dip into this. And that one I will start today, and later tonight I will give you a kind of summary review about. And then I also have these books that I took out from the library, and I thought that we'll see where the wind blows. And then I also have Catherine House by Elizabeth Thomas. This has kind of been on my back list for a while, and I wanted to get a different vibe from the sort of quicker paced horrors I've been reading. I think this one is more gothic leaning and a little bit more internal of an experience. And then I also got, let's see, Cherish Feyre by Bethany C. Morrow. And then I also have An Arcane Inheritance by Camilla Cole. So those are the picks that I have for the rest of this week to pick from once I finish The Poet Empress, but I am going to go run my errands really quickly now, and then I will get to reading, and hopefully I can do a quick summary for you and then share my thoughts and opinions on book 1. Good evening. I'm here to do a check-in for The Poet Empress by Xin Tao. I am, I think, maybe 40% into the book. I'm on chapter 34. I'm holding this so weird, but I only have the one hand. So the basic premise of this book is that we're following Wei Yin, and she learns that the prince in waiting is asking for concubines, and she is in a very desperate position because her village has experienced a famine, and she thinks the only way out of said famine is to offer herself up as a concubine. And it's kind of a difficult process for her because she is a village girl. She doesn't have any sort of formal education or really understands the responsibility of a concubine, but she does it anyway because she's like, what do I have to lose? And because of her gumption, she is picked as a concubine, and to her surprise, she actually catches the attention of the crown prince, and she ends up being chosen as his betrothed. So she is now going to be the empress in waiting. And the issue here is that the prince is very known to be cruel and abusive, and unfortunately, because she is his chosen one, she has to experience a lot of that abuse. And because she is experiencing this, she is allowing herself to be a sort of sacrifice for her family so that she can provide for them back home at her village. And she kind of cooks up this idea of learning how to read in order to be literate and write a poem that can kill this prince, and in this story, they have a magic system where you can write poetry that becomes a spell. So, for example, you can write a poem regarding healing, and you can use that poem on somebody to heal them of their wounds. But the thing is in this empire, only men are able to read. So not only is it illegal for her to be reading at all, but it's doubly illegal that she's even trying to cast magic. So she is in a very precarious position. I am about 40% into this book, and the one thing about this is that the chapters are extremely short, so I think it is such a quick and intriguing read. But I think Shen Tao writes very concisely, but very descriptively. Like, I read the first chapter and I felt very transported into this world, and I felt very connected to Wei and her plight and her ambition to be some like a sort of sacrifice for her family in order to bring them to a better position in life. And the thing is like, she has such a simple goal, and then she is introduced to the inner court, and then she realizes how intense the political atmosphere is within court, especially with the women. And like, a very powerful part of this book is that one of the women that she is taken in with tells her, like, this isn't just about being able to provide for our village and the people that we love and care for. This is about gaining power for ourselves, because us as women have never had power, and this is the only way that we can gain it. And when I tell you, I am just so intrigued, so embroiled with the court politics, and also I am very worried about Wei and where she's going. She has chosen some very precarious choices, and choices that will really put her in a very dire position. But because she has nothing to lose, or she feels like she has nothing to lose, she is doing a lot of things that puts her in these dangerous positions. But she's like, the worst thing that could happen is I die. And if I die, oh well. And it's really interesting because she's doing all of these very intense things and choosing to put herself in very dangerous political positions, all for this very simple and wholesome goal to like take care of her family and to provide for them, to make sure that they don't have to starve, and that they can be educated, and that they can just have a simpler life. And like, the fact that she is doing all of this for that, just, I think, speaks volumes about her character. So at the 40% mark, there has been some interesting political reveals and kind of allyships that she's slowly creating for herself. And I am just so intrigued about where this is going, especially because she is trying to, assassinate the king in waiting. So I'm not sure how that's going to reflect in the second half of this book, but I am just so intrigued. And I think for a debut novel, Shen writes in such a way that really, really pulls you into the book. It makes you want to continue turning the pages. And I think the way the world is laid out is very thorough, and not in a way that leaves me confused or unsure of where I'm at. Again, I think the writing is so concise yet so descriptive, and I am just very, very impressed with the writing here and the world being built, and just all of the intrigue and the character work in this, I think, is so great. Thus far, I highly recommend picking up, honestly, for a standalone fantasy. It is so intriguing and so exciting to read. Good evening, it's the next day. I am 80% into The Poet Empress, and unfortunately, I wasn't able to finish it like I anticipated because at work, surprise, surprise, I had to work, which was quite unfortunate. So I didn't have time to listen to the audiobook while I was working because I just had to be locked in. But I think that my feelings from yesterday have stayed the same. I am so intrigued with the political machinations that are going on in this book, and I think one of the strongest points that the author has in this story is the character building in it. I think Wei Yin is such a compelling character to follow because we get to see her from the very beginnings in her impoverished village and seeing her rise and seeing her have to deal with the complexity of court politics as someone who was not raised in that manner. She has to kind of get to grips with the fact that, unfortunately, in order to survive, she has to kind of lean into cruelty. And I think just watching her contemplate what is important to her and what part of her morality she thinks is important to keep and what things she's willing to sacrifice in order to stay alive in a place that is very cruel to women in her position is such a compelling read. And I kind of paused at the 80% mark because at chapter 54, I believe, a slight spoiler. If you think trigger warnings or spoilers, I will put that up on the screen. But I do want to bring light that there is discussion of child SA in this. I don't think Shen Tao writes it in a gratuitous manner, but it is discussed on page and spoken about. And I think the way certain characters in that scene kind of discuss it within their internal mind as they're processing it, it definitely isn't there for just like a shock factor. There is a discussion about the cruelty of that and the importance to bring such issues to light. There was an important and poignant point of bringing that up, and I think it also leans into a certain character and why that character does the things that they do within the narrative. And just that whole chapter in and of itself, again, it wasn't very gratuitous, which I appreciated, but I don't think it takes away how like sad that is. And unfortunately, that's something that happens in real life, and the discussion of that in the chapter I think was handled pretty well. It wasn't like brushed off or dismissed. And I just think in general it was such a sad reveal for one of our characters to learn about their past history. And I think this book really handles a lot of topics of trauma, and I think especially like generational trauma. For our prince, he is handling the inheritance of violence, being a prince there, and his magic being in regards to more like war magic. There is just an inherent violence that he is expected to put upon other people. And then our main character, Wei Yin, she experiences the trauma of poverty, and that really influences the way she chooses to make her decisions in court and like what kind of political choices she makes. I think from an outsider view, we can see her choices being cruel, but it's like sometimes she's put in a situation where cruelty is the only answer because that's the type of environment that the court is, and that is the type of place the Azalea house is. And I think it's just such a compelling read because the author isn't necessarily telling us that our characters are wholly good and wholly bad. There's a lot of gray area, and I think following Wei Yin specifically and having her mentally go through all of this and be like, well, is this the type of person that I want to be? Do I want to be a cruel person? and then she harkens back to memories of who her parents were and who they raised her to be. But then she comes back to the present and she's like, but I'm in this position where, it's either this, that I choose to be cruel to other people, or I have to forfeit my life. And she has to make very hard choices because she believes her end goal is for the greater good of so many more people than the certain cruelties that she has to deal onto others. And I think that's such a compelling read, and why I really enjoy adult fantasy, because we don't really get the author telling us what is right or wrong in the narrative. We are able to kind of process our own emotions and our own thoughts and opinions on what our characters are choosing. And I think for a debut novel, again, Shen Tao is doing such an amazing job, and it is such a compelling read. And despite it being so quick paced, I feel so immersed. I feel like I've been in this book with these characters for so long, and a part of me wishes that this was a series, but at the same time, I think Shen is writing in such a way that I think it's just so perfectly paced for the story that is being told that I think one book is enough, and I'm just being greedy and I want more. But this is such a amazing debut novel, and honestly, at the 80% mark, I can just say that I know that I'm going to be picking up their next novel whenever that next novel comes out. And I highly recommend, if you're somebody who likes the more historical court Asian dramas, like I'm somebody who grew up watching like some of the Chinese and Korean dramas my grandmother would watch with the Vietnamese dub over it, and having no clue what was going on because I would be watching it like mid-season and she had watched like the whole first part of the season when I was at school. This just reminds me of all of that political intrigue and that like kind of cattiness of the court and the kind of underhand plays that you have to do in order to survive a very, very cruel environment. And this is just all of those things that I love in those sort of dramas put into a book. And the characters are just so compelling. And you read each page with your breath held. Like, what is Wen going to do? What are the choices she's going to make? And, is she going to be safe, and is she going to make it to the next chapter? So I really am impressed with the writing in this, and I cannot wait to finish the book. I'm here to give you an update on The Poet Empress. I have finished it, and it is a very easy 5 stars to give. I think this was just a very brilliantly done adult fantasy debut, and the pacing was well done for it to be a standalone. It didn't leave me wanting any more of what the author had already wrapped up and already given us. There is this sort of open ending in regards to where certain characters are going to be going and like what the future of this whole dynasty will be like. But I think that's kind of natural in fantasy. Like the world just doesn't stop just because the book ends kind of vibe. And I just think that it was such a fun read, despite it being quite dark. Given it is an adult fantasy, so there are adult topics that are being talked about, and I had said in a prior clip that there is violence and quite a bit of it in this one because one of our main characters, I think, only really knows how to communicate via violence and was taught that violence is the only way to express one's power. It is such a crucial part of communication for one of our main characters, so that is something to keep in mind. But I think the author kind of forewarns you in their author's note beforehand, so that is just something to keep in mind. But yes, do check trigger warnings, but I highly recommend that you pick it up and read it, especially if you are somebody who likes adult fantasy. I think it is pretty rare for us to get standalone fantasies, and I think standalone fantasies that end in a very satisfying way, and I think The Poet Empress does that extremely well, so I do highly recommend you pick that up. I am kind of, done with the night. I'm gonna go shower, do everything, and then I'm gonna play a little bit of Boulder's Gate. I am going to start a dirge playthrough because I've been watching my friend Steph stream on her Twitch channel, and watching her go through the storyline via Dirge just feels right and a lot more up my alley storyline wise. So I'm going to be doing character creation, and this is basically my very, very, very first time playing Baldur's Gate. I had like one playthrough that I started, but I've never really picked up that playthrough. But I think just starting a completely new file will be the move for me there. I have started Catherine House, which is the next book that we are going to be talking about in this vlog. I'm not that far in. The chapters are very long in regards to the time on the audiobook stamp. So I don't know what the percentage I am in at. We basically get introduced to our main character. She is living in this place called Catherine House, which is this very prestigious home that these girls are taken into. Is it only women? I'm not entirely sure if it's only women or if it's co-ed at this point, but basically you are given almost a scholarship to go to the Catherine House, and your enrollment in the house is for 3 years. They are famous for kind of pumping out very well known and very well regarded high figures in society, and so our main character obviously wants to go to Catherine House to gain education and then hopefully be in like a higher standing position. It is kind of based in the modern day, but I think in regards to this book, I'm quite intrigued with how the narrative is set up. We are met with our main character. I think her name is Inez from my memory, and then we meet her roommate Baby, who has like this little snail friend that she brings in, and like one of the rules is they're not supposed to have pets or whatever, and Inez is like, snail's not a pet, and her roommate's like, maybe it could be, but that's like literally all that I've read. And then we're gonna get introduced to the kind of rules of Catherine House. I think talking about this book, I'm gonna be as vague as possible. It's quite a short read. I'm pretty sure that the audiobook was like 11 hours on there, but I just know from the people who really enjoy Catherine House, most of them are very, very vague about speaking about this book, and so I want to keep it pretty vague for myself, and I want to keep it pretty vague for you, just in case it ends up being something that I really recommend. But yeah, we're going to be vague about that, so I'm going to go close off my night, and then I'm going to read some more Catherine House, and maybe if I make a good percentage through, I will give you an update tonight, but if not tomorrow, I will give you an update on Catherine House. I am 25% into Catherine House, and it's getting weird and culty, and I'm having an interesting time with it. I know it has a kind of lower rating on Goodreads and just like in general, but I am very intrigued to see what comes of this. And I'm wondering if this book is going to take us through the entire 3 years at Catherine House, or if there's going to be some sort of event that pauses that 3-year tenure that she has at this house. But our main character, Inez, is just as equally confused and unaware of things going on at Catherine House. It's interesting. I know I'm going to be vague, but like this is within the first 10%. Her roommate baby talks about actually genuinely researching Catherine House in order to get into it, and Inez is like, I know jack shit about this place, and I'm just here because I need a place to be. And I just find that sort of character to be so interesting to follow because she is so fresh of mind and she has no sort of bias about Catherine House. And so I think she's a great vehicle for us to follow in this story. I didn't get any footage of my character creation for Baldur's Gate, but I did get that done. I am doing a drow who is a ranger class, so I'm very excited to do that dirge playthrough, and yeah, looking very much forward to it. I didn't really play too much of the game because then I paused so that I could watch Olympic figure skating because it was the women's free skate tonight. And I just love watching the Olympics in general because it just makes me so emotional and proud of these Olympians and these athletes for all that they do. But I especially love figure skating because the art of it, no matter whether it's ice dance, men's, women's, pairs, I love the art of ice skating, and getting to see Alyssa Liu on the podium after seeing her like for the very first time, I think, at a US Nationals when she was 13, and getting to watch her progression as a young woman and as an athlete just makes me so emotional. And to see like an all Asian podium for women's ice skating is just, my younger self would be so geeked out about this. So it was so fun to watch, and very happy for all the skaters for doing such an amazing job. I am going to get myself to bed, but 25% into Catherine House, I'm glad that I'm intrigued, and hopefully some weirder things happen in this house because I'm expecting something weird to drop. Just don't know what kind of weird shit is gonna drop, but I know something is going to be revealed, and I hope my jaw is on the floor. So I'm here to close out this reading vlog. I did complete Catherine House yesterday, and then I also read 3 volumes of 2 different mangas. So let's talk about Catherine House first. My thoughts and opinions on it, I will keep pretty vague because I think this is a good novel to come into without knowing too much, besides the fact that our main character Inez is going to this house in order to receive an education, and hopefully that opens up bigger, wider avenues for her in her life. And I think atmospheric wise, this was perfect for the genre of it being gothic. Gothic horrors tend to be a little bit more slow paced, a little bit more slice of life. And I think it being in an academic setting in this sort of college vibe and it being so isolated was the perfect atmospheric setup for the story being told. And I think inherently isolated stories like this does breed a sort of fever dream, almost hallucinatory experience, because there is this mundanity of day-to-day school life of a college student, and then suddenly you feel this like creeping atmosphere and a sort of question of, is this weird? Is this strange? Or is this the culture of the house? Or is this something that's concerning? And our main character, Inez, is someone who also is questioning her experience. And so, as a reader, as we're following her point of view and as she uncovers different secrets of the house, I think it was unraveled really interestingly. I think the only reason why a 3.75 star is being given is that I didn't have that like gut feeling of a 5 star. I think 5 stars has like this inherent like personal feeling to it, but I think writing was really great and very evocative. And I think for a debut novel, it is such a great introduction into the genre. I don't think Elizabeth Thomas has any other novels, but I would hope that Elizabeth is planning to write something new soon-ish. But I think I would definitely pick up a novel from Elizabeth, as I really enjoyed the narrative and the very slice of life and a very creeping atmosphere that was set into this. And I also do highly recommend the audio. I think the narrator did a really good job with bringing that story to life as well. And I do kind of understand the criticism. This is a horror that has one of those open ending ends, and I know certain people don't enjoy that with horror. A lot of people like it to be wrapped up, but I didn't mind that open endedness in it. But I think there was just certain elements with certain characters that I just wanted to know more about. But, obviously, we're not going to get that if we're following one character's point of view. She's not going to know all the answers that are going on in this house. But yeah, I think it was a great time, and I'm glad I could finally take that off of my TBR because it's been on there for a very long time. And then hopping over to my manga reads, last night I read Yona of the Dawn Volume 40. I know the mangaka announced that this year is going to be the year that the entire manga series is wrapped up, and I wanted to just catch up on it. And I also heard news that there is a second season of the anime coming out, which it's one of my favorite series. If you like a historical fantasy, this is definitely one that I highly recommend. The first episode of the anime kind of had my jaw on the floor. It was very shocking and a very abrupt start to a journey with this young woman who really grows into her own power and understanding of her position as a princess of this kingdom, and her kind of taking on responsibility and helping the people in her kingdom kind of have a more fruitful, more flourishing life. And also, there's a lot of political intrigue with her building better ties and connections with other foreign countries around her. And then there's also like a found family vibe. So I really highly recommend it. It's one of my favorites. And chapter 40, there were some moments that were quite tense. I'm not going to say, obviously, I'm like 40 chapters into a series, so I don't think I would say too much about what's going on in volume 40, but yeah, there were some very intense scenes, and the ending of volume 40 made me immediately go press borrow for volume 41, so hopefully I can read that soon. And then the two other manga volumes that I read was volume 10 and 11 of Sign of Affection. Sign of Affection is a series that I have been reading since the first few manga volumes were translated into English. It's been one that I've slowly been consuming. These two volumes, we kind of learn a lot more about our main character Itsumi. In this entire series, we are following our main character Yuki, who is hearing impaired, and we kind of see her navigating college life as she's trying to gain more independence. And then we also get to see how she communicates with other people given that she's hearing impaired. And the main love interest, Itsumi, is somebody who she meets kind of randomly one day, and he is somebody who is well versed in different cultures, and he is very enamored with Yuki, and he decides that he is going to learn how to communicate with her via sign language. And there's a romance involved given the title Sign of Affection, and I just really enjoy how different of a story it is. I don't think it's often that I read manga with main characters who are hearing impaired, and so to have this representation and have it be such a sweet and wholesome read is something that I really enjoy. As somebody who's also hearing impaired myself, I really enjoyed seeing Yuki and how she has grown from volume 1 to volume 10 and 11. It was just a wholesome read, and one that I'm so happy that I continue to pick up. I think there's only one other chapter left, or one other volume left, that is English translated until the next one, but we'll see. Surely when I pick that up, I will update you on it. But that is all that I have for this week. I think this is a more realistic read given that I have a 9 to 5 job, and most of the time on my job, I don't have time to read. There's probably like a window of an hour to 2 hours that I'm able to really like focus and concentrate, and I don't have like meetings or I don't have to talk to clients where I'm able to go ahead and pick up an audiobook. But this week was a little bit busier than anticipated, so not too much audiobook time. And after I clock out from work is usually when I kind of wind down for the day. So through that window of time, I usually the most time that I read is like an hour before bed. So this is a relatively realistic amount that I'm reading. Of course, I've read a little bit more because manga is a little bit easier and shorter to get through. But in this video, we read The Poet Empress, which was a 5-star, a adult standalone fantasy that I highly recommend. And the second book we read was Catherine House, which was a 3.75. That one I also highly recommend, especially if you want a kind of slow, creepy, gothic horror. That one is a great one to read. And then Sign of Affection and Yon of the Dawn are manga and anime series that I love, and hopefully if you're in the mood for any anime manga, that's something you pick up. But I thank you so much for following me this week. If you've made it this far in this video and don't have anything else to say, let's leave some key emojis down below for Catherine House. And again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!